On October 29, 1929, the stock market dropped 12% in a single day. Fortunes vanished in hours. Banks collapsed in waves. By 1933, a quarter of Americans had no job, and families who once owned homes were living in cardboard shacks called Hoovervilles. The government responded by throwing everything it had at the problem. The New Deal created public works, relief programs, and new agencies to put millions back to work building bridges and dams. It helped, but a full decade after the crash, unemployment was still hanging stubbornly around 15%. Then, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. Overnight, the economy pivoted. Factories that had been gathering dust roared back to life. But now they were building tanks instead of tractors, and bombers instead of family cars. On paper, the statistics looked miraculous. Defense spending rocketed from 1.4% of GDP to over 37%. 17 million new jobs appeared out of thin air. For the first time in over a decade, families had a steady paycheck, and the national unemployment rate dropped below 2%. Later, economists looked at these numbers and concluded the debate was over. When people stop spending, the government simply spends for them. World War II became the permanent proof that massive government deficit spending can definitively fix a broken economy. Let's test that so-called prosperity. Imagine sitting around a kitchen table in 1944. Your family is out of sugar coupons until next month. Your meat allocation has been cut to 2 pounds for the whole family. Gasoline and coffee, cheese and meat, even shoes are strictly rationed. Americans were saving over 25% of their income during this time. They hadn't suddenly become master budgeters. They saved because there was almost nothing to buy. The government had literally banned the production of new civilian cars since 1942. This chart shows how GDP soared during the war, but it reveals a core mathematical flaw in how we measure economic health. GDP counts all spending equally. It adds the same $10 million to the ledger whether an economy produces houses and food for its citizens, or produces bombs and battleships to drop into the sea. The total economic output was going up, but the actual living standards of the American consumer were dropping. People were working longer hours for more money, yet eating less meat and drinking less coffee than when they were broke. The wartime boom was a statistical illusion. It measured the raw size and output of a mobilized military machine, completely masking the harsh economic reality endured by the citizens funding it. The real test of the spending theory arrived in 1945. The guns went quiet. 10 million soldiers were coming home and about to flood the job market. Simultaneously, the U.S. government was preparing to slash its spending by over 60%. Economists and politicians looked at this math and panicked. They universally predicted that without government spending propping up the factories, America would face the greatest period of unemployment and industrial dislocation in its history. They were completely wrong. The economy didn't crash. Over 20 million people were released from war-related work, yet unemployment peaked at a mere 3.9%. The economy survived the massive spending cuts precisely because it was finally free to pivot. Bomb factories switched to making household appliances. Shipyards pivoted to fishing vessels. The steel and labor previously locked inside the war machine flowed back into making things consumers actually wanted to buy. The Keynesian prediction was tested in real time, and it failed. True prosperity returned to the American family not because the massive government spending continued, but exactly because it stopped. So if the war didn't fix the global economy, what did? To answer that, we have to look at how economies break in the first place. In 1914, governments fighting World War I quickly reached a limit on how much tax revenue they could squeeze out of their citizens. The treasuries ran dry, but the war wasn't over. Their solution was to abandon the physical gold standard. Without gold keeping the currency in check, governments could just print whatever they needed, effectively running a massive, secret tax on their populations through inflation. The results were catastrophic. A race to the bottom followed. Countries violently devalued their own currencies to steal trade from their neighbors. By the 1920s in Germany, a single loaf of bread cost 200 billion marks. Savings were destroyed, trust evaporated, and global trade collapsed. By 1944, delegates from 44 nations realized that fixing the global economy meant fixing the money. They met in New Hampshire and created the Bretton Woods system. This diagram illustrates their offensively boring, highly effective solution. Every major global currency was pegged to the US dollar. In return, the US dollar was pegged directly to physical gold, fixed at $35 an ounce. This physical anchor created a hard stop. If a government got too aggressive with its printing press to goose its exports, the market would punish them. You couldn't just turn your currency into confetti anymore. For the first time in decades, money meant something again. That foundation of stable, trustworthy money politicians couldn't casually print, was the actual cure that allowed flattened nations like Germany and Japan to rapidly rebuild and thrive in the 1950s. The system worked until the 1960s. America decided it wanted to fund an expensive war in Vietnam overseas, while simultaneously building a massive welfare state at home. They wanted guns and butter, but they didn't want to raise taxes to pay for it all, so America broke the rules. They fired up the printing presses and flooded the globe with paper dollars to cover their massive deficits. But the physical gold in Fort Knox stayed exactly the same. There were vastly more dollars floating around than gold to back them. French President Charles de Gaulle did the math. He realized that by printing unbacked dollars, America was diluting the value of the dollars held by everyone else. The US was effectively stealing purchasing power from its allies. De Gaulle decided France wouldn't hold worthless paper. In 1965, he sent ships to America to cash in France's dollars and demand their physical gold. Other nations saw the math and panicked. It became a global bank run, and the United States was the bank. Facing the total depletion of US gold reserves, President Nixon went on television in 1971 and officially suspended the convertibility of the dollar into gold. The anchor was gone. The entire global economy was now operating on an unbacked fiat experiment.
The consequences were immediate. Without the gold restraint, inflation surged. The oil crisis hit, economic growth stalled out so severely that economists had to invent a new word for the misery: stagflation. This chart tracks the resulting decades. We entered a relentless cycle of financial disasters: the savings and loan crisis, the dot-com bust, the 2008 collapse. And for every mess, the government rolls out the same solution: print money and flood the system with liquidity. This is why the World War II prosperity myth is so dangerous. As long as the public believes that massive government deficit spending creates wealth, politicians have a permanent excuse to do the very thing that causes the instability in the first place. Printing money doesn't build houses or produce food. It only creates a temporary illusion of wealth on paper, while silently debasing the actual purchasing power of the citizens who have to live in the real world.